Have you suddenly started feeling anxious behind the wheel, even though you've been driving for years? If so, you're not alone. Driving anxiety is far more common during the perimenopause and menopause than most women realize. Even becoming a more anxious passenger can happen. What's surprising is that many women don't connect this sudden dread and panic or loss of confidence in the car with what's happening hormonally in their body. So today I'll explain why this happens and share 3 simple ways to help you feel calmer and more in control again. A few weeks ago, we talked about increased fears during the menopause, and driving anxiety was one of the most common concerns. So many women said things like, "I thought it was just me," or shared that they'd stopped driving altogether because it was becoming so overwhelming. During the perimenopause and menopause, your levels of estrogen and progesterone can fluctuate or start to decrease. And the hormones play a key role, not just for your monthly cycle, but also helps to regulate your mood and your nervous system. And as hormones drop, your nervous system response becomes much more sensitive, and you can very easily fall into that flight or fight mode, even at the slightest little thing. And that can cause a sudden rush of panic and anxiety. And it can take so much longer to feel that you're back in control. Also, on top of that, other things can interfere with your driving as well. So brain fog means that maybe you can't concentrate. You might, even suddenly forget where you're actually going. It can affect your focus, so your reaction times take a lot longer. You can be fatigued because you've just not had enough sleep, and that can impact on your driving. It could be once you start getting a bit nervous, you end up getting a hot flush, which can make you feel just so very uncomfortable. It can be changes in vision. You may find that you're not reading the signs as well, or you miss your turn off. And one of the things that came out very strongly was how so many of you found that night driving was just impossible because the bright lights really hurt your eyes. So if this is you, it's not in your head. There are real physical reasons for this. So the 3 things that you can do to help yourself: support your nervous system before you start driving. So instead of, maybe sitting at the breakfast table thinking, "Oh, I'm going to be driving soon and I really don't want to," start to calm your body beforehand. Maybe spend 5 or 10 minutes just calming yourself down, slow, deep breathing. And if you spend more time breathing out slowly, that signals to your nervous system that you are safe, that you're in a safe space. And remember that getting anxious, we tend to hold our breath, which then perpetuates the anxiety and the panic as well. Remember the basics. So drink some water before you're going driving, or maybe carry a water bottle with you if you're on a long journey. And remember to eat before you drive too, because if your blood sugar dips suddenly whilst you're driving, that can actually trigger a panic attack out of nowhere. The other thing you could do is try our Relax spray. This contains the herb passiflora, which is known to help calm and support the nervous system. Maybe take it about 10 minutes before you're due to go out the door. The other thing you can look at is magnesium. This is great for supporting the nervous system, and it's also in our menopause support tablets. Make your driving feel predictable and safe, because uncertainty fuels anxiety. So take time to plan your route in advance. Make it, even if you're going down the shops and you know where you've been before, try a sat nav if you're going on a long journey, especially if you're not sure where you're going. It's easier, it gives you all the directions you need, and it means that it just frees up mental space in your brain, and it helps to give you more control. I know my family still laugh at me because even though I go and visit them regularly, I know exactly where I'm going. I always use my sat nav, and it just gives me that little bit more confidence. If you want to rebuild your driving confidence, then go out in quieter days, drive somewhere where it's not quite so busy, just to build your confidence up. Also, reduce decision making whilst you're driving. So, because sometimes you get in the car, you take off, and then suddenly it's like, oh, it's too cold, or I don't like the music. So plan everything before you actually turn the key. So put the temperature at where you want it to go, get the station that you want music to play, set it up all beforehand so that you've got less decision making whilst you're actually driving. And give yourself extra time too, so that you're not having to rush. Because I know, even for myself, if I'm going to work and I'm late, that feeling of being late gives rise to extra panic and stress, and that can escalate quite quickly. So the goal here is not to avoid driving, but just to rebuild your trust in your driving so that everything is more structured and familiar and predictable. And what that's going to do is that's going to tell your nervous system that it's perfectly safe to drive. Create a calm driving environment. I find, for me, we've talked about this at work, and some people like everything to be absolutely quiet. I prefer music just to calm me down that little bit more. So it could be soothing music, it could be a podcast that really gets you interested in what's going on. Remember your temperature control. You don't want it to be too hot, because the last thing you want to do is to trigger a hot flush. And sometimes, I know for me, I always like the window open a little bit, so I'm getting that little bit of fresh air. But I like my feet warm, and that actually helps to calm me down whilst I'm driving. So you can see that little changes can have a big impact on how you feel when you're driving. And watch how you talk to yourself, because we're so good at criticizing ourselves and our driving and everything that we do. So make sure everything you say about your driving is positive. It's not, oh, I can't do this anymore. It's just, yes, I can do this. I'm perfectly safe. I've done all these little steps to help me on my way. You're not alone. I mean, I was just absolutely flabbergasted when we read all the results and comments of um, everybody who had watched the previous Fears one. And even I hadn't realised that it was such a big issue with everybody. If you're really stuck, then I do recommend doing some kind of advanced driving course. It made a huge difference to me, and I'm so glad I did it, because I still love driving now, and very often you can't keep me out of my car. Remember to be aware of where maybe your trigger points in driving are, especially if you do certain routes regularly. I know for me, I drive through Glasgow from sort of nearly one side to the other on a regular basis. And I found that once I'd got through Glasgow, because the M8 is just, it's a nightmare road at the best of times. But I found, just as I got out of Glasgow, I always ended up getting a big hot flush at exactly the same spot on the road. And I couldn't figure this out. And I was like, right, I need to look at what's going on here. Why was this happening? And I actually realized that once I got onto the M8, just because of the traffic and the state of the roads, I would be holding my breath, and I would be clutching onto the steering wheel for dear life. And I realized that coming out of Glasgow, it'd be a sort of relaxing breath. But by that point, my nervous system had been so wound up that it triggered a hot flush. And once I realized that, it just encouraged me to do the deep breathing and be aware of my breathing whilst I was driving. And again, that made a huge difference. So have you had experiences with driving? What did you do to help yourself? How did you combat this? Please let me know. I love to hear your stories. Have a lovely week, and I'll see you soon.